ഈ ചുരു പെട്രോൾ വില അയ്യോ
इसके लिए टिकट आज्ञा आज्ञा
Probably luggage. ମୁଁ ବଡ଼ ହଇରାଣ ପଡ଼ିବି ଶୁଣେନି କହିଲା
विद्यां च यस्तेद भेदो भयं सह अविद्यया मृत्युं तीर्त्वा विद्ययामृतमश्नुते अन्धं तमः प्रविशन्ति ये अविद्यामुपासते ततो भूय इव ते तमो यौ विद्यायामृताः अन्यदेवाहुर्विद्यया अन्यदाहुरविद्यायाम् इति शुश्रुमधीराणाम् जेनस्तद्वीचचक्षिरे विद्यां च यस्तेद्भेदो भयं सह अविद्यया मृत्युं तीर्त्वा विद्ययामृतमश्नुते ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ
Gentlemen, and welcome you all to Think Literature, the Bhubaneswar Literary Festival 2012. We would like to inaugurate this festival in a very unique manner. We have all forms of expression of creativity, and we have creators of creativity here in this audience. But Odisha is known for its traditional art forms which always use nature. We all know that because of the iconic sand artist, Mr. Sudarshan Patnaik, that we have managed to be in the global scenario in sand art. So this morning we would like to inaugurate this festival in a very unique way by showcasing the age-old art form of sand art through sand animation. So this is going to be a creative expression of sand animation through new age technology. We have a wonderful trio of sand animators. They call themselves SMS, and they have won a lot of televised shows all over the country. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you watch on your LED and LCD screens, we are going to showcase Think Literature, Bhubaneswar Literature Festival 2012 through sand animation. Please watch. Thank you.
Knowledge, when shared and applied, creates rich value. TEFLA's knowledge management initiatives are catalysts which focus on the processes, systems, and mechanisms across knowledge domains. After years of rich and varied experiences in promoting knowledge and creating forums like Globe Oil, Grain Asia, Global Gold Forum, World Rubber Congress, International Pulses Forum, the Sugar Summit, Alcobev, Think CSR, and Think Odisha Leadership Awards, we are convinced that no knowledge is beneficial without the guiding principles of conscience. No life is meaningful without the kindred presence of the other. Our sense of reality is always impacted by our imagination. And we have ventured into the world of Think Literature. Welcome to the world of Think Literature 2012. A world where the heart never hardens, the temper never tires, and the touch never hurts. A world of heightened self-consciousness. It is a world which constantly reminds us that not all about life is already written. there is still so much more to be told. It is a world which compels us to think of the indispensable need for man to have trust in his own future. It is a world of willingness to locate the self which is far loftier than the passions, the perceptions, emotions, and sentiments. Think Literature 2012 celebrates life with a hymn for harmony. Because Hymn for Harmony ensures blissful existence, and literature is the most agreeable way of harmonizing life. Think Literature 2012 celebrates life with a hymn for harmony.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to formally thank the young artists and animators, Santosh, Mittu and Santosh. They call themselves SMS, to please come up on stage. Request the SMS group to please come up on stage. And young artists from Puri, they have taken their art form to a different level. We thank them so much. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move on towards our keynote session.
Ladies and gentlemen, another warm welcome this morning to this wonderful program, Think Literature 2012, Bhubaneswar Literature Festival. Let me hear yourself giving yourselves a very big round of applause. Come on. How loud can you clap? Thank you. I'm sure you're feeling good. I am Robi Furtado from Teflas, Mumbai.
And I'm Sangeeta from Teflas, Mumbai.
Yes, friends, no knowledge is beneficial without the guiding principles of conscience. No life is meaningful without the kindred presence of the other.
And literature is the domain where the other is imagined, the conscience trained, and the aesthetic and ethical choices are educated. So by thinking and promoting literature, we seek to provide a sense of life that is fuller, more informed, and therefore more satisfying and beautiful.
It gives me immense pleasure this morning to invite the Managing Director of Teflas, Mr. Kailash Singh, who I request to escort two luminaires of our land, Professor Manoj Das and Miss Nandita Das, to the stage. It also gives me pleasure to invite on stage Mr. Ranjan Padi, the head of the Times of India, Odisha.
And ladies and gentlemen, can we have a big round of applause?
And I request Mr. Kailash Singh to present our guest with a bouquet of roses. Thank you very much. To Ms. Das, Mr. Manoj. Okay, thank you. Literature enlarges our compassion. It awakens our imaginations. Literature makes our sojourn on earth a thing of beauty and joy. And to make this morning more joyful, I invite on stage to the podium someone who is passionate as well as compassionate, who has been successful in bringing the industry community to common platforms, thus expanding the knowledge sphere for the industry and the events planned by him, which are known to be a unique blend of content, communication, and celebration. He is undoubtedly the thought leader of the events industry. It gives me great pleasure to please welcome, to deliver his welcome address, the Managing Director of Teflas and the architect of Think Literature 2012, the Bhubaneswar Literature Festival, Shri Kailash Singh Ji.
Good morning, friends. Respected Sri Manoj Das, Ms. Nandita Das, guest speakers, sponsors, members from the media, guest participants, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all on behalf of Teflas and the Times of India to this World of Think Literature 2012 Bhubaneswar Literature Festival. I cordially welcome our very own Sri Manoj Das, eminent bilingual writer of the land, and Nandita Das, known to world audiences for her critically acclaimed performances in films and theatres as an actor. I welcome Dr. J.P. Das, Ms. Pratibha Ray, Mr. Siddhakant Mahapatra, Mr. Anant Mahapatra, Mr. Harish Trivedi, Mr. Ram Gopal Bajaj, Mr. Rudra Prasad Sengupta, Mr. Jayant Mahapatra, Mr. K. Sachidanandan, Mr. Sitanshu Yaschandra, Mr. Ramakant Rath, Ms. Pratibha Satpathy, my friends Nalini Mahanti and Jatin Nayak, and all other speakers and guest panelists. The backing of the sponsors further strengthens the relationship the corporates as well as the city of Bhubaneswar shares with literature and other art forms. I thank the writers, participants, sponsors, and the committed audiences who made possible the collective energy of this festival. Friends, in today's world, it is not the country with the larger army, but the country with the better story that will prevail. We have to be able to tell the better story, the idea of India's soft power. We have the soft power of Bollywood, India's cuisine, fashion, yoga, and more important are the Indian brain. Armed with the global appeal of Bollywood, the country's multi-million-dollar movie industry in Mumbai, and the power of culture, India has already launched a massive exercise to project its soft power across the world. Its multi-ethnic culture, peace-generating civilization values that includes religious and philosophical ideals, and the unique art forms and literature are perhaps the core of this soft power asset mix. Art and culture build bridges like nothing else. Take India's complex relation with its neighbors. It has a history of turbulent political relations with Pakistan, border issues with China, ethnic links to Sri Lanka's political crisis, and issues of democracy with Nepal and Bhutan. One common theme that has enabled India to sustain non-official dialogue with neighbors through non-diplomatic channels has been culture. Exchange programs in art, music and dance and bilateral film productions sustained the India-Pakistan dialogue even when the two countries were at war. I belong to the creative industry, but when I look at big companies like Coca-Cola and Unilever, I feel they don't manage factories, they manage narratives. And the language they use is not of analytic and impersonal, but of intuitive and aesthetic. It is the language of the entertainer, the artist, the poet, and the storyteller. And I have the proud privilege of presenting to you the storyteller, Professor Manoj Das, and the entertainer and the artist, Ms. Nandita Das. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kailash Singh, for setting the tone for Think Literature 2012. And now, ladies and gentlemen, recipient of the highest honor, fellowship from Central Sahitya Academy, Dalits from 5 universities, Padma Award, Professor Das has been translated into major Indian and foreign languages. For 4 years, 1981 to 85, he was the author consultant to the Ministry of Education, Government of the Republic of Singapore. Moreover, he is an icon and inspiration to the millions. Professor Manoj Das calls himself a reluctant speaker, but when the wisdom in him speaks, and that always speaks, the entire literary world stands up and listens to him. And I'm sure his keynote address today will elevate the entire space into a blissful state. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome to the podium Professor Manoj Das.
The height is okay? I think so. Sri Kailash Singh Ji and friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is a beautiful beginning, I believe, of a significant event. Well, since I am the first speaker, I take the privilege of extending a warm welcome to you all to the discussions that will follow, and I believe certain genuine points, certain, as we call nowadays, brainstorming issues will be focused during your discussions. I must confess that I also had a miniature brainstorm when first I was informed about this event and also about the general title, Literary Festival. And Think Literature is the subject. What exactly was my dilemma, I can explain best through an event that took place thousands of years ago in history. That was the time when Xerxes, the great tyrant of Persia, wanted to become a world conqueror and led a huge army and a massive fleet of ships to conquer Greece. Midway, suddenly he stopped the whole procession on the sea, in the sea as well as on the land, and climbed a hillock and stood on the hillock and surveyed the huge army he had. He laughed wildly. His generals and his ministers around him, they also laughed. Next moment, suddenly, he became so grim, indescribably grim. And also it was seen that tears drizzling down his cheeks. And those who were laughing a little while ago, they did not know what to do. They also tried to be grim. And then his Prime Minister asked him, "Your exalted honor, what happened to you?" He said, "I was in a festive mood when I looked at my huge army and the fleet. I was so delighted, I laughed. Next moment I began to think, 100 years from today, not a single individual of this entire force will be there. Nothing will be there. I will not be there." And I started weeping. The festive mood was cancelled by the thinking mood. I was wondering whether a literary festival and think literature can go together. I was a bit uncertain about it. And then came the next message, the theme of this event, hymn for harmony. So it came as a solace as well as a call to a challenge that probably this event could try, the people participating in this event could try to harmonize the two, because apparently the two disharmonious propositions can certainly at some point can meet. And also that reminded me of my high school days. I used to read we were taught a poem, St. Cecilia's Day by Dryden. From harmony, from heavenly harmony, this universal form began, something like that. And the poem ends with the message, from harmony to harmony, the progress goes on. And ultimately, the human being is the epitome of total harmony. I was a bad student, but a lover of literature. This poem influenced me so much. When I came out of my classroom, everything in nature appeared to be a manifestation of harmony. I looked at a flower. What a marvel of harmony is this? I looked at a bunch of flowers and I wondered, each flower is a manifestation of harmony, yet together also they make a greater harmony. I wish that had continued throughout my life. Alas, it was not to be. I grew up, and growing up means to be more and more disillusioned with the dreams of the childhood. I don't remember who was that naughty lyric maker, verse maker who said, "Where do all these golden children go to? Are these dumbfounded adults they grow to?" I also grew into a dumbfounded adult. I also started knowing life in a new way. And a time came, I also subscribed to the view that life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Well, when I surveyed the entire experience of life as projected through literature and philosophy, I could find out there are only two approaches to life. One is, as the last word uttered by Albert Camus when he died, absurd. The whole life is a manifestation of the absurd. No meaning. It is futile. It is an illusion. The other way is, it may appear to be an illusion, but certainly there is a reality in it, there is a truth in it. And all literature, all creative arts, all that is stirring the human imagination is a gradual unfoldment of that reality. I am sure the first theory of life that everything is an illusion cannot inspire a single writer, even the most nihilist of writers, even the most pessimistic of writers, to write anything. Even the greatest illusionist, if he is asked, if everything is illusion, whom are you calling as illusion? Whom are you trying to persuade that he is an illusion? And who are you if not an illusion? In other words, there have to be something real somewhere, despite the appearance of everything being illusion. And when Macbeth realized that life is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, something more than the idiot must have been there within himself to recognize that life is an idiot. So, that sustains us. But the whole thing is, the tragedy is, the entire history of mankind, civilization, while on one hand, it is a progressive revelation of a harmony, on the other hand, this progress proceeds through plethora of disharmonies. Every moment we are stalked by paradox and contradictions. Take for I don't have much time, but take for an example, the highest aspiration of man, religion. Religion tries to grow toward the sublime. All religions have only one goal, to transcend the gross existence and become sublime. But they fight among themselves in a most gross way. In each religion there will be sects fighting, tearing asunder one another. Within one sect there will be 100 subsects doing the same thing. It boils down to one finding: disharmony remains within the human consciousness, within the individual. We need not turn to Macbeth to understand it. When Macbeth murders Duncan, next moment he says, Glamis hath murdered sleep, therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more, Macbeth shall sleep no more. Cawdor, Glamis, Macbeth, all are one individual. But in one part of that individual, he has been tempted to commit a great crime for which the entire Macbeth, the entire personality will suffer. That is the tragedy of our existence. Why to go to Macbeth? Come to modern times. The moment you speak of Robert Frost, what an image will come to you. Stopping by wood in a snowy evening, that beautiful darkness, calmness, quietude. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have miles to go before I sleep and miles to go before I sleep. A calm, quiet personality. If you read his biography, he was the most intolerant of any modern writers probably. The moment he's in literary gathering, others are scared about him because whoever begins to speak, he will taunt him, tease him, and pull him down. One day his dear friend Devoto told him, Robert, you are a good poet, but a bad man. So one can be a talent within, in one part. At the same time, in his nature, he can be something of a deplorable example. Terhune, one American poet, became conscious in his autobiography about these conflicting emotions existing in the same frame of our body. When he wrote his childhood reminiscence, one day, when his mother, when she was a little child, aged 5 or 6, his mother left for the neighbor's house, and mother came back and took the child to task. When I left the home, you were there, and a piece of sugar candy was there. When I come back, I see you are there, the sugar candy is not there. What is the mystery? And Terhune says, Mother, believe me, I ate it up. But while I was eating, I was also weeping, because I knew that I am doing something wrong. So, it goes on happening like that. There are hundreds of instances. Our perception of the reality around us does not extend to our perception of reality within us. One example which all my friends, I have narrated more than once to my friends, they will bear with me. There are many people, I feel tempted to refer to that particular incident. Many years ago, in one of the cities of India, there was a very big literary event. Dr. Mulkaz Anand, Vijay Tendulkar, Prabhakar Maswe and I were there. We were received at the airport and taken to the Vice Chancellor's residence where we had lunch. After the lunch, we were proceeding along the beautiful promenade of the city, overshadowed by trees, flower-bearing trees, and the reception committee chairman, the mayor of the city, was walking with us. And suddenly he sees a street urchin holding onto the rump of a bullock cart, staying hanging. And the Mr. Mayor shouts at him, get up, you naughty boy, you will kill yourself. And the boy runs away. A little while after, we see there is a most ugly poster, a certain scene from a film, really ugly. And that same boy is pelting stones at that poster, trying to separate the hero from the heroine or something like that, as if. And Mr. Mayor shouted at him, you naughty boy, what are you doing? And the boy runs away. Then Mulkaz and Vijay Tendulkar are ahead of me. I was walking with him. And he is telling me, look at these children. How small, yet how much of filth is there in their mind. I was in a mood to talk and I told, Mr. Mayor, you say the filth is the child's mind. I used a very bad adjective. I said, who is that producer who did this film? And who is that artist who drew, or the art director who chose this particular scene from the film and who allowed it to be displayed here? Filth is there in mind. A little bit of it has spilled out of their minds and into the child it has gone. Why to blame the child? I had just finished speaking. We had reached the university auditorium. I sat down. Next moment, a professor of the local university leans onto me and says, Manoj, what a faux pas blunder you made. I said, why? Mr. Mayor is the producer of that film. That very moment I realized the poverty, the irony of our perception. When you look at the scene, very cleverly we cut our own role out of it and review and critically see the rest of it. But disharmony has many faces. I won't go into details now. But what is the solution to it? Each one is a bundle of contradictions and conflicts. What then does sustain us? If there is nothing to sustain us, we will fall apart. The fact that we survive despite all the conflicts and contradictions leads to a truth that there is something much more capable than our struggling emotions, mental notions, prejudices, sanskaras, etc., against our lust or pride which sustains us. What is that? In India, we have always believed that there is something deeper than the mind and the life force, which is called soul. Few years ago, WHO asked a very beautiful question to the Indian director of the Health Services Government of India. I will not go into details, but their psychologists have come to a situation when they are trying to find out if there is any fourth dimension to human health apart from body, life and mind. That is again another question. I will not go into details. But I believe the time till today, we are working at the stage of mind. Mind is the most dominant power in our being. Very surprisingly, only last month, many of you might have read, it was published in Times of India, the summary, I remember in November, the finding of a research team, Stanford University, led by a very famous psychological professor, Professor Crabtree. Intelligence of humanity is on the decrease. The finding says that probably we are becoming so much more and more dependent on machines and mechanical aids to our existence that intelligence finds that its role is gradually coming down. The details have been published in the university's own magazine, but this was this summary which was published in some of the Indian newspapers also. We can come to only two conclusions. One is, mind has become redundant, so we will be reduced to ciphers or very dim-wit human beings. Or evolution will demand that we go beyond mind. And in the vision of Sri Aurobindo, as he says, we are passing through an evolutionary crisis. And mind has given us everything that it could, but it is bankrupt now. Beyond it, something more is there, awaiting its manifestation, what he terms the supramental. Either this or that. I'll conclude with one story which is coming to my mind. A moonlit night. 3 riders riding horses, passing through a vast meadow. A mysterious night. As they are passing through a grove, they hear a very solemn voice, stop. And they stop. Voice next says, dismount. And they dismount. Then the voice says, pick up those pebbles as much as you want to. Why should they pick up pebbles? But the commanding voice is so powerful. They can't help, they pick up. And the voice again says, in the morning, you will be sad as well as happy. Mysterious statement, prophecy. Now you can go. So they ride the horses and go to the destination. Morning comes. They see all the pebbles in their pockets have turned into diamonds. They're happy because they are diamonds. They're sad because they did not have more of them. Now, mind's situation is this. It can come to a problem, face a situation. Had they known that they are going to be diamonds, they would have picked up more. They did not know, because the mind does not have the capacity to tell humanity what next. Intuition could. Intuition is a faculty of the soul. Let us believe harmony can remain